Hello, today is Wednesday, June 12th, 2019. This is the Cluster API office hours, a subproject of Cluster Lifecycle. As a reminder, we have a code of conduct policy, which basically boils down to don't be a jerk. Given the size of this meeting in history past, we have stuff at the top of our meeting invite, which is basically how to engage. So if when where possible, try to use the hand raise item, or feel free to turn your camera and just raise your hand physically and I'll try to see if you're there. With that, I added some things to the agenda at first, but I'm looking for group topics because there was no agenda planned. So I was going to monologue for a little bit. Let me share my screen. All right, so for those of you who don't know me, my name is Tim St. Clair. I'm one of the co-chairs for SQL Cluster Lifecycle. I've been taking a hands-off approach for quite some time on Cluster API and let the sub-project leads and owners kind of do their business there. Given a bunch of issues and things that have occurred over the last couple of months, I've talked with the sub-project owners as well as the co-chairs for SQL Cluster Lifecycle, and I'm going to help moderate, I think, this sub-project for a while until folks feel comfortable and get into a rhythm again. Then from there, probably hand that back off. So who am I? Why am I doing this? The first and foremost thing is to kind of bias towards action. Right now, the sub-project has kind of gone through a little bit of a paralysis for a while, discussing large changing features that they wanted to do. But I think I'm going to push back on everyone and try to make sure that we log issues, make sure they're finite where possible. And if we need to take a longer route to get to future changes, that is probably better. So if it's possible to make your PRs atomic and to make them piecemeal, one at a time, that will probably be better for everyone involved. I also want to get out of the idea of design by committee. If we have some broad views of how we want to go in certain directions, let's log the issues and agree or disagree upon finite specific items instead of trying to boil the ocean again. Incremental, stepwise, explicit is greater than implicit. Write it down, and write it down in horrific detail. And I'll try to hold everyone accountable to that, right? Myself included. Sometimes I know I can preach on a soapbox, and Chuck is very adamant sometimes about echoing those things back to me. So it's a good idea to keep me accountable too. I'm no different than anyone else. Be respectful and have fun. So that's how I'm going to try to run things. So hopefully with that, I just want to give a couple other PSAs. We did a initial grooming section for V1 Alpha 2 according to the plan that was publicized on Discuss a while ago. It's very simple. We're going to do another grooming session this Friday for those who are interested in all the gory details of what it means to walk through all the issues. If you are interested in walking through the issues with everyone else, please just let us know, or I will post the details actually to the mailing list, and that'll be easier. You can just join. That is a good way for you to sign up for issues. So for those who want to have sway in the project, those who want to make their opinions known and heard, the best way to do that is to chop wood and carry water. There's a lot of issues in the backlog. It's in the order of 90, and we need help trying to burn those things down. We had talked during the grooming session that it might be a good idea to do a code audit. And for those who are interested, the request was made to push that code audit till next week. Typical way we've done this in the past is we've literally had somebody open up an editor and somebody open up GitHub bug page. And as you walk through with the editor, you talk things out loud and you open up issues along the way. It's a good way to get familiar with the code. It's also a great way to, to get engaged with helping to fix some bugs and chop the wood and carry the water. So if you're interested in that, I will send out another session for next week.
Tim, you've got a hand up.
Last but not least, there is a machine states and bootstrapping PR. That was the proposal that Vince and Andy had been working on, and assorted other groups of people. It is pushed as a PR now for comment. We will probably hold the PR for a little while, as long as we deem necessary, and we will come back to the group before we merge something. But doesn't mean that we need to stop the train right now. Some of those things are non-controversial. So wherever things are non-controversial, try to open up the issues, and we'll try to start getting execution in place for some of those things.
Moshe has his hand up.
I'm trying to see if there's anyone's got their hand raised. It doesn't look like there is, but I can't really tell.
Yeah, Moshe seems to have.
I have my hand up. So
yes.
Sorry, I had to click on a different tab.
No worries. So it's in relation to the design by committee.
Did you want to say something?
So are we? Hello.
Yeah, we can hear you. I think there's a problem with Tim's headphones. I'm gonna Slack him.
3 times.
So basically, what I'm proposing, or what I suggest, is that maybe we adopt rough consensus as a consensus model rather than democratic consensus. So rough consensus being from the IETF, I think, where you don't look for the best option, but the option in which people are not violently in agreement with, they can live with it. So it's just a suggestion on my side to maybe get some more decisions made.
So in general, there is well-defined precedent in the Kubernetes community for how to handle this, and I'll be following that precedent. So at the end of the day, it's the people who have owners and approvers are the ones who actually can make the final decision or call. If you want to get an owner's approvals, then you got to chop wood and carry water, right? And you can always, it's like binding voting in traditional models, right? Those who have the binding votes get the final say, but you can always vote independently, but they're like +1s or -1s non-binding. And I would expect approvers of the group to respect those, if there's an overwhelming majority of -1s, to respect that too as well. Like, people should not act unilaterally. So I'm going to be following that precedent. I'm sorry, my ear things were not working before, but they are now. There's no more hand raised, so I'll move on. Lucas, did you want to do a quick intro?
Yes. So just following the same thing that Tim has said, I'm Lucas, another co-chair of SQL Lifecycle, and I will also help out moderating and supporting Tim. I'm going to go to university in the fall, so it won't be maybe too long of a thing, but yes, until then. Yeah, I've been doing military stuff in between now. Now getting back to Kubernetes. Okay, if we don't have anything else, I don't see any hand raised.
So for those who aren't familiar with Lucas, in the efforts of chopping wood and carrying water, he's like a lumberjack with wheel packs, right? So he's chopped a lot of wood and carried a lot of water in the community. Group topics. Chuck.
Yes. So in developing the Cluster API upgrade tool that has been posted a couple of times on the Cluster API channel, we figured it would be good to have a testing framework. And to do that, we pretty much needed a Cluster API provider with Kind as the backend. That seems like something that we could also use for Cluster API itself. I had a question about where it should live. It seems like there are it could live either inside Cluster API or it could live outside Cluster API. There are a lot of pros and cons to both. I can go over those real quick. So if it's inside Cluster API, one of the nice things we can get, assuming that this is something we want to use for a testing framework for Cluster API, it would be nice to have it in the same place. So if an API changes, or if a function changes or whatever, you're forced to update the provider, the Kind provider. On the flip side, the dependency, it's kind of confusing to have a subproject inside of a project that's already got its own Docker file and things like that. So it could be a little bit confusing. On the flip side, if it lives outside of Cluster API, it would be just like any other provider that we have, like AWS or GCP. But if we do end up using it for testing, then it could get into a weird state where you upgrade, you change the API of Cluster API, but then the tests will all break, and then you have to update the framework and then figure out how to rerun the tests, and it could be a little bit weird. I wasn't sure if this is something that even like the SIG wants to adopt, or I'm not really sure, but that was kind of like my question.
So in true Tim fashion, do you have an issue open for this?
I don't have an issue open for this.
Could you open up an issue for this, and we can weigh in on the issue and come back to it. Maybe we should re-queue for next week to make a decision.
Yeah, no worries. I will open an issue.
Does anyone have strong opinions there? But I think if you do, you should probably go to the issue and log in there.
No strong opinions, but Chuck, when you have the issue, please link it there too.
Vince?
Thank you. So I have two things on the agenda. Like the first one is just a general status update on the Bootstrap PR. Around 50% of the comment have been kind of resolved, and like I'll go through the rest this afternoon to make sure that we have consensus on like the most commented items. For the other item that I have is Node-REF controller for V1 Alpha 1. This is an issue that was open a while back from David, and this effectively added a new controller to Cluster API that kind of follows like what we have proposed in the Bootstrap pre-boot proposal for kind of like managing like access to remote node references. So it will fix like a bunch of issues like when you're running controllers from a management cluster. For the Node-REF controller, like you would need like a kubectl, and we're using a convention-based approach to get there for now. And I've linked like the PRs related to this work that one of them is still work in progress, and two of them have already been merged, and they're mostly utils. That's all I have.
Any questions there? Going once, twice. Three times. That was really hard to hear you, David.
I just said thanks, Vince. This has been a long-standing problem.
That's all we actually have for an agenda. We have a pretty short agenda today. Are there other topics that folks want to discuss? If so, please just add them to the doc, and then we'll walk through too.
Did we check in so based on the contributor summit in Barcelona, we started drafting the values of the project, and you mentioned some here in the beginning. Did we check in these into Git somewhere?
So I had a conversation with Doug. I wanted to create a larger doc, and I started creating a larger doc. But we decided to break up the doc into two separate things. One was lexicon, two was values, three was scope. But there was also another fourth thing, which is like design principles of what we're trying to do. And I have not finished that. I believe Doug put up a PR for the lexicon, which I think I'd highly recommend everyone reading, because one of the things we found out from the face-to-face summit is we were kind of talking past each other. And I think the lexicon will help us when we communicate, so we're not in violent argument about the same ideas. In fact, I will open an issue. How's that sound? So I keep myself honest to make sure that I PR that. All right. Did you have anything else there, Lucas?
Not especially on that part. Breaking it up into 3 pieces seem very good. Are we generally, as a meta topic, using the docs/proposals folder inside of Cluster API, or are we going with KEPs to community?
Docs inside of Cluster API, keeping the design for Cluster API localized because it's a separate sub-project.
Right. So do we, I'm just thinking like, there's only one KEP then of Cluster API in Kubernetes community, that if we communicate, so like, is it what we do here, is it visible to the outside somehow easily, or
it should be?
with regard to
I mean, if people we have, I don't know how many people on this call all kind of watching this repo. So if you're watching the repo, you should be able to see it all.
Right. I was thinking we just got the request from the release team that we should do some kind of status updates of the release. Not like it doesn't have to be tied like Cluster API isn't tied to the Kubernetes release schedule, but something that just what we've been doing generally. So I was thinking like if we have if it's easy in Kubernetes community to also follow what we're doing, is the original proposal, the original KEP up to date anymore? So, stuff like that. But that's more meta.
Yeah. Moving on to the next, Daniel.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask about the implementers office hours. So there are 2 slots right now, one on Tuesday at 12 p.m. Pacific time, one on Wednesday at 1500 hours or 3 p.m. Central European Standard Time. I think the Wednesday Central European Standard Time meeting is not, so there's not a host right now. I host the Tuesday one. So I'm wondering if people are interested in hosting that, or if not, perhaps if we should remove it. And I also wanted to ask if this is serving people's needs, if there's any feedback. Two things that I would say is that people do come by with implementation questions. Or somebody came by yesterday who was working on a new implementation targeting V1 Alpha 1, and we were able to sort of look into the code, kind of give I think a quicker sort of intro to them would be possible, maybe through Slack or some other through email. And then sometimes people totally new to CAPI come by with just questions about what the project is. But I haven't seen so many people from like who are existing contributors come by, and maybe that's just because we've been in, and we've had a lot of other meetings anyway. But yeah, any feedback? Does the time work or not work? Should we, because we asked about the time many months ago. I don't know if it's worth asking for a different time, maybe for the European meeting. Maybe that doesn't work for.
In true Tim fashion, what I think I would do, and Pablo has hand raised, so after I'm done, I would say log an issue and send it to the mailing list. I think those are 2 ways to get broader feedback on if those times work and whether or not people have proposed different times. So I think maybe opening up an issue to the main repository for the time being, for lack of a better tool, you could also use a doodle, but at least with GitHub, everyone can comment. And then you could send it to the mailing list to solicit broader feedback if people don't have comments right here.
Okay, I'll do that. Thanks.
Pablo.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, sorry, Zoom is doing strange things. Regarding the implementers hours, when I read to the project, start playing with the idea of doing some provider for testing, I found useful to meet this to join these implementers hours. However, I think that what later became more important was once I tried to fix something in the working any issue. The code base is large and is complex, and I have in this case I work together with another person just because we decide to work together. We have our own private chat, but I think that probably this is the most interesting objective that this office hour could have. If we want more people to join and work on the issues, because if you're a newcomer discussing an issue over the GitHub is like forever, and the Slack is probably not really good for discussing code, in my experience. So in summary, I found it useful at the beginning, and later on, I will have to use it probably.
Any other feedback with regards to office hours? Going once, twice, 3 times. Right. Are there any other last calls for topics today? Going once, twice, 3 times. Okay, well then I'll say thanks everyone. I think the plan of record is I will send out emails for folks who want to walk along both the grooming and the gory details there, as well as the gory details of doing code walkthrough probably sometime next week. If someone's interested in being the person who walks through the code or wants to help me with that effort, I think that would be a good way for broader exposure and get your hands in there. I welcome it to not be just me, and I would prefer actually not be me, and then we can work together on it. With that said, it doesn't look like there's any other topics, and I'll say thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.